What's up? What's up? Real MVPs, Ricky Widmer here, along with my co-host for today for MVP Sports Live, Dave Oster. Dave, how you doing?
Doing great. How you doing, man?
So the people need to know I'm doing fantastic because the last 20 minutes have been the best time of my life because ever since you turned on the camera, I have not seen this Dave Oster. First off, just get for the viewers out there, can we get a profile right now? A profile of Dave Oster? Just because you could see that Dave has longer hair than you've probably ever seen him on MVP. And this is how Dave looked when he turned on his camera and had it all in the front. And I just need one thing for MVP Nation out there. How much younger does Dave look with his hair like this? Because I swear Dave looks like a high schooler right now.
I disagree.
That's how young you like. I feel like you look younger with your hair longer. And maybe it's because I associate like the long hair that like covers the eyes with like high schoolers who don't care about high school days. Yeah, like, I ain't getting a haircut, Mom. You can't tell me what to do.
Exactly.
I ain't gonna do that.
That rebellious time in your life, and instead it's that quarantine time in your life when you're like, I'm not gonna see like. I've not seen Ricky in months.
You had the little like beard going. You're like, hey man, like this feels good.
Oh, I did grow out a beard a little bit for a while. I had to cut that. That got bad. That got real bad.
But I wanted Dave to do this just so you guys could see at the beginning, and I want to get opinions on Dave's hair. Should he cut it? Should he keep it growing? Should he get some product and move it back? Dave was talking about a man bun before we went live.
I'm approaching man bun territory on the back half. So
I'll say this. Mm-hmm. How much patronage, like dollar-wise, would we need to hit to see man bun Dave? Like full in, I'm going man bun.
Not much, to be honest. It's just one of those things where
Dave's like right now.
Pat just said emo Dave. I'm like, I could get.
You had it going. You said all you needed was the streak for Seth Rollins.
I can get the Seth Rollins.
Burn it down, thing. Baby. Burn it down.
Our spins anytime now. There we go.
It's got the little. You just needs that the gold streak you said for Seth Rollins.
Dude, what was it? AFI. I feel like I could pull off the guitars from AFI. Yeah. You know?
Which fits.
Play a little Miss Murder.
Because you like AFI.
Little guitar swings.
Mm-hmm. Little guitar swings. But welcome into MVP Sports Live, the daily sports talk show here on MVP. And before we get started, got a jam-packed show. Going to be talking about Antonio Brown. We're going to be looking at college football. Got some news there. A little bit of Conor McGregor. Going to be doing it. This is my best like Conor McGregor like arm sway while I'm sitting in my chair. Probably doesn't look good.
You mean the Vince McMahon walk?
The Vince
that he
McMahon.
shamelessly stole.
And then obviously the NBA, as we always talk about every day with the league going on, getting to the playoffs ever so slightly. But before we get into everything, got a little bit of housekeeping today. First off, as always, patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. If you want to interact with the show, go to patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. Silver and above members get to choose Wet Boys, get to any polls we put out, get to interact with those, get to ask us fan questions that we will answer live on the show. You go to Patreon to get that done. Also with the housekeeping, a story that kind of goes into what we talked about yesterday that I just wanted to mention is that the MLB, Dave, did something good. And they canceled something, but it wasn't the season. They canceled the Field of Dream game that was supposed to be between, I think, the White Sox and the Yankees. That is being pushed to 2021, and it will still have the White Sox. We don't know who they will play. And the other thing of housekeeping is one of the big stories going around in the sports world has to do with TCU and comments made by head coach Gary Peterson. We will talk those, but I thought it was better to talk about that tomorrow after you and I can look at it, get our thoughts straight.
Too.
That too. I've got in our notes that one of the players, his name is Dylan Jordan, put a tweet out about it. So we will talk about that, but we're going to give it some time to breathe. We'll talk about that tomorrow, not today. Don't want to rush it. And kind of jump the gun on anything. Wanted to get that in during housekeeping so that you guys know we haven't forgotten about it. We're not overlooking it in any way. But Dave, let's start with the first topic. We're starting off with the NFL today because Pete Carroll made some comments to the media about a certain controversial wide receiver. Actually, two controversial wide receivers, I'll say. This is coming from Brady Henderson at ESPN. It says, Seattle head coach Pete Carroll acknowledged that the team has interest in Antonio Brown, saying general manager John Schneider has been monitoring the all-pro wide receivers' complex situation. Carroll went a step further when asked about the team's interest in another suspended wide receiver, saying the Seahawks are very open to a reunion with Josh Gordon. So, for those of you who may not know, Antonio Brown had his debacle happen with the Raiders, then with the Patriots. He's currently got an 8-game suspension for violating the personal conduct policy. CNN says that the NFL announced the suspension for the first 8 games of 2020 without pay for multiple violations of its personal conduct policy. But Dave, the first question I want to ask is, should the Seahawks be looking to sign Antonio Brown as a wide receiver?
I think any team worth their value should be looking at a wide receiver like Antonio Brown, someone who has the skill level, the talent, and the experience in the league. I mean, I understand what he's been through personally. On the side is a completely different story, and you're definitely going to write your contract with some extra clauses in there that, you know, most normal players probably wouldn't have. But I think he's one of those guys where, is there any harm to your reputation as a team to look at him? The Seahawks are a team that are so squeaky clean, that have such positivity around them. They are such a fan favorite. They're massive in Seattle, the whole 12th man movement. Like, I think that they're one of those teams that they could absolutely take a shot at him and see what comes from it. I mean, I think that they're one of 2 teams, at least I've heard rumors. Obviously, the second one would be the Tampa Bay Bucks because of the Tom Brady connection.
Yeah, and I mean, I say because the other thing that I've seen, and this is from SI.com, I'll just mention it. We don't have to get into detail because, honestly, sorry, Cincinnati, your team's not good. But apparently SI.com says the Bengals are among the betting favorites for Antonio Brown. I'm just assuming that's because, you know what, he's got so much baggage, no one wants him but the Bengals.
Maybe.
But, I mean, the thing I think of when it's the Seattle Seahawks is this is a Pete Carroll move. Like, Pete Carroll, to me, is the type of head coach that is, how do I want to phrase this? He's not just good at working with troubled players. He kind of invites it. Where the Seahawks, and I'm looking at an article from SeattlePI.com from all the way 5 years ago in 2015 that said Seattle Seahawks have history of giving troubled players a second chance. And I feel like ever since Pete Carroll's been with Seattle, he doesn't care about the baggage that you've had before, because I feel like Pete Carroll feels like, I can work with you. I can work with you to get the best on the field, not have any of that baggage come out. And I feel like he's been this coach not just with the Seahawks, but at USC as well.
Well, I mean, he's had controversy at USC as well too. Like, that's he has handled that, and he excused himself in sight of that at USC. He does seem to have a great relationship with a lot of the players, and I think that he has the way to do it. But also, just him talking about it seems to me, I hate to say I've become jaded, but after the Colin Kaepernick comments came out, where, you know, he's like, oh well, we're not going to sign him because I think he can be a starting quarterback somewhere else. I wouldn't want him to be on the bench for us. Like, it's come out after the fact and look like a good guy kind of shit that I hate. It's kind of reminiscent to me of the I would say it's kind of reminiscent to me of the whole Boston Celtics every trade rumor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they offered them 5 first-rounders and 2 of their firstborn children. They still wouldn't take it for 1 pick. Like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. Nobody cares. Like, you're just lying to me to make people sound different, you know? And I feel like Pete Carroll has a lot of experience with public speaking, and he always puts himself in the best light. So is this perhaps just more of that? I don't know. I mean, they did try out, I think, like T.O. at the end of his career. They did try out, Moss at the end of his career. Like, they're a team who's willing to take shots on talented players.
I mean,
I don't know what Antonio Brown has left.
They went ahead and traded for like Frank Clark, who had issues with the Colts, Jadeveon Clowney, who had issues with the Texans. They traded for them, so it's like you even mentioned, they have experience with it. But with Pete Carroll, also the thing that I agree with you with he always tries to either say it at the time that makes him look like the good guy, not the bad guy.
Yeah.
But think of the coaches that Antonio Brown. Antonio Bryant, way old wide receiver. Antonio Brown has worked with recently.
Yeah.
John Gruden, who I would not call a player's coach, and Bill Belichick, which are two coaches that are in the my way or the highway kind of situation. The last time Antonio Brown had success on a football team, he had Mike Tomlin as his head coach, and although I have my criticisms of Mike Tomlin, the results speak for themselves, and he is more of a player's coach than Gruden and Belichick are, and I think that's where Pete Carroll fits in, where Pete Carroll's more of that player's coach and tries to relate to the players, and he's not a guy that's like my way or the highway that could be good for Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I almost disagree with you. I feel like Tomlin is more of a strict head coach than Gruden is, because Tomlin, I mean, after we've seen everything from Antonio Brown and Bell in the past year and a half, like, you gotta admit, I look back and I'm like, God damn, you were good at your job. Like, you put up with all this circus shit, and you just put out winning season after winning season after winning season. So I don't know. That's a different conversation as far as Pittsburgh's history.
I'll say this real quick though about Tomlin is maybe the strictness isn't the right word, because he does have a system. He is strict with that. Yeah. But I think it might be because he has his players back 100%.
Okay.
Like with the Antonio Brown locker room thing with the video.
Yeah.
He didn't bash AB into the public. He was behind him. He defended his player. Maybe that's it. And I think Pete Carroll's in that same vein of he's not going to go ahead and bash AB. He's going to be behind him, and then behind closed doors we'll have that discussion. But you can go ahead with what you were saying.
But no, I think that you're right. The environment of the team definitely could play a huge factor into Antonio Brown, and what team thinks they can bring him in and let him try out for the team. I think that the Seahawks are an extremely well-structured team as far as that goes. Behind closed doors, you hear nothing but positives from leadership as far as Russell Wilson is concerned. That defense, there's so many key figures on that team. And over the years, they've turned over guys. They've let guys go. They still continue to have just a really well-respected locker room. So I think if there is a team that is prepared to have someone like Antonio Brown come in there and try to make sure that he doesn't step out of line, he lives up to the expectations that they're setting, the standards they're setting, then that's a team that I think could handle it, absolutely. And again, it's the rich getting richer. This is a team that they added DK Metcalf last year. Everybody memed all over them and his drills and his times and physical specimen, can't run routes, can't catch balls. All he does is go out there and just be a disgusting wide receiver.
Throw it as high as you can. He's going to go get it.
Just inhuman shit out there. So I think that it is the rich getting richer situation if they do go after him. But again, I have to wonder how much of this is just Pete Carroll public talk and how much of this is reality, because I don't even know, like, if Antonio Brown, he does the whole, like, I'm going to retire. I'm not. Tell me how many games I'm suspended. I'm not coming back if you don't. All this stuff. Like, I don't know if he's okay to play football at this point. That's my concern is he in a state where he can be on a football field, be in the locker room with guys, and be okay? Because that's concern number one for me.
Yeah, and we have been talking at this point as though if he does sign, I will go out on that ledge and say I don't think any team should sign Antonio Brown, only because I don't think he's in the right place to play football. I don't think he's in the right place mentally and emotionally. Like the outbreak that we saw when it was the cops came by his house.
Yeah, and he thought he was going to record it and look good.
The outrage, like that made him look like, oh my God, fucking Antonio Brown is batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And if I'm any team, I don't want any part of it. To me, the other side of this that is more of like a, that I could see happening is the Josh Gordon. Like, I like how Pete Carroll throws out the headline of Antonio Brown and then kind of slides in Josh Gordon. Because, like, Josh Gordon's a guy, if you look at his past years, just his last 2 years, where in 2018, I think it was, when Cleveland was on Hard Knocks, you had kind of like fans rooting for him because it's like, oh, Hugh Jackson. I talked to him. He's going to be good. And then it's like during Hard Knocks, oh, he's not with the team anymore. He goes to New England. It doesn't work out in New England. 2019, he's traded to the Seahawks. That's a player where I feel like the Seahawks could really dive in and say, hey, let's try to get Josh Gordon because he might be an easier fix, I'll say, than Antonio Bryant and can help the team just as much. Antonio Brown. I keep saying Bryant and I don't know why.
I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers did have a wide receiver named Bryant.
That's right.
Martavius.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But Antonio Bryant is an actual wide receiver, too.
From the past?
Yeah, like Eagles and Bucks days. Yeah, Buccaneers, Antonio Bryant. He played from 2002 to 2009. Nice. But I'll let you talk about Josh Gordon.
Yeah, Josh Gordon's an interesting case because he's a gifted athlete and he's been fantastic since he started in the league. I mean, his problem is that he suffers from addiction and substance abuse. So like that's something that teams are more able to help assist with now. They're better prepared to assist with now and try to help him through that and keep him on track. Whereas I think Antonio Brown has a lot of other things going on, and I can't speak for him or, on his behalf or anything like that, but it does seem like it's something that he needs to continue seeing, a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever help he can, and keep working on that until he gets into a place where he's able to come back and play. Because a lot of people are just pointing back and be like, is this due to all the concussions in his career? Is this CTE effects we're seeing already? And like, if that is the case, then that's even more terrifying because he's still a guy in the prime of his life and he's not even in his 40s yet, which is where we see that kind of jump happen as far as people changing with CTE. So it could be a lot of scary things with him. And I just don't know that there's a clear path for a lot of teams out there to know what steps to take to help him and to help themselves on the field. Whereas Josh Gordon, I think there is a path there and they do understand what needs to happen and he understands. It's just you need to keep him on that healthy path.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I've said it moments ago. I don't think Antonio Brown should be playing football this year, but we'll have to wait and see. If a team signs him, the Seahawks kind of being one of the few that just came out recently and said, hey, we could sign him. But let's segue from the NFL to college football because there was some big news this morning from the Big Ten, but I feel like this could have more of a rippling effect on college football as a whole this year as we get closer to the season. This morning, Minnesota wide receiver Rashod Bateman opted out of the football year. He said that he'll begin preparing for the NFL draft. Bateman was currently the 19th player on Todd McShay's way too early top 32 prospect. So one of the top wide receivers in the draft opting out. Right now, that brings the list, and this is from sportingnews.com. The list of players is small. Ravon Bonner from Illinois, running back. Caleb Farley, cornerback from Virginia Tech. Cassidy Woods, wide receiver from Washington State. And now Rashod Bateman from Minnesota are the only players that have opted out. The question I want to ask you, Dave, and the topic I want to bring forth is how many more players will we see opt out? Will we get a situation where, and this is me and how I would feel, is if, like, I think of Trevor Lawrence. if he fears, and I don't know how Trevor feels, I haven't texted him in a while. Got that direct line. But if a player like Trevor Lawrence feels, hey, this season ain't going to be safe, I'm going to sit out because I'm going to be the number one pick in the draft anyways. How many more players could we see opt out, and how many more big draft prospects do you think we could opt out this year for college football?
Yeah, I think you will see a handful more of those guaranteed kind of guys, the guys who are blue chip kind of prospects. They don't have to do much this year as far as their stock is concerned going to the NFL. They're in a situation where, you know, there's only so much they can gain from it, but there's a whole lot more that they could lose. I think that there's a lot of talented players who hopefully make the right decision, but I'm still hedging my bet that college football gets more than a handful of games in before they are put to a screeching halt. Like I'm still skeptical of the entirety of college football going off without a hit.
So you think the season will start and then end, kind of like what we're calling for baseball to do?
Yeah. I think that I think due to stubbornness and people wanting to get paid in colleges and all the money around it and the TV deals, the contract, all that shit, I think that they're going to force the season to start, but I don't know that they're going to be able to finish the season realistically. So I think that there's a lot of people who are in that safe zone of like first through third round talent. Why bother? I mean, like, I get it. There's the one part where you're like, I came to college. I've been playing with these guys for 2 years. Like, I'm out there to win with them. They're my brothers. I want to, put it all on the field for them. Yeah. But at the same time, you got to worry about yourself at some point and understand that A, it's a health risk, and B, you're not going to hurt your future stock. So I don't know. It's something that everybody's going to have to come to a decision on. I don't think it's an easy decision, but with the health concerns and the almost, in my mind, guaranteed lock of like, hey, I'm a top talent in this draft, like, I'm not worried about it. Not playing. Well,
and I mean, circling in my head are just the different options that college football can go, because out of college sports, the main two that we talk about in football and basketball, I am more optimistic for a college basketball season. And the only reason I say that is with college basketball, the idea that I have right now is just eliminate the non-conference. And basically you're eliminating from the second week of November to the end of the year. You're eliminating those 2 months. That's where teams have the most travel, where we got like the Maui tournament and the Las Vegas, the Atlantis tournament. And you can't have teams traveling to these different tournaments while this pandemic is going on. And I feel like, I hope that shit gets put together by 2021. And that college basketball could come up with a season that's like, okay, conference only, sometime in January up until when we would usually end for March Madness, and then boom, it's just a shortened season next year. College football is a little different, and I'm going to bring in the Big 12. Actually, their president and chancellors approved a scheduling model for this upcoming year. And what they voted on was it's a 10-game slate. The 11th game would be for any teams in the conference championship, but it's 9 conference games and 1 non-conference games. They would start sometime in mid to late September. The league still expects to play its non-conference games before the start of league play, according to the release. And the model gives the Big 12 the flexibility to move back its Dr. Pepper championship game from the 12th to the 12th or the 19th of December. So, to me, I don't feel like football should happen in the fall. I'll get to that in a little bit. But with this model, is this a model that teams could use if we get football in the fall of 9 conference games, 1 non-conference game?
I mean, again, they're doing everything they can to try to contain the zones of these conferences, which makes perfect sense. The less travel you're involved in, the less contact that you can potentially have with someone who is contagious. So like they're doing the best they can. Unfortunately, I don't believe that that's good enough. In my mind, I still believe that it's an unnecessary risk, and they're just greedy as all fuck. Like, I think this comes down to a bottom line dollars thing when it comes to college sports. And the NCAA is so corrupt, and these colleges are so dependent on money coming in from their sports that it's just like they have no option but to make some makeshift answer that will get something off the ground. And I just, again, it's not a good answer, but it's the best bad answer they have.
Yeah, and I almost think what college football should do is kind of what we've seen here in Illinois with high school, where high school and even some of like I think the NAIA did this as well, which is college level, where it's basically like football will be in the spring. We will have football, we will have a season, it will be in the spring, because like you can do this model because think about it, mid-September you have half a month there, then a month and a half with October, month and a half with November, half a month. So what, 3 months with 2 halves and 3 months of play. Yeah. The only tricky thing is with D1 college football is the NFL draft. Let's say they have it to where we start in February, like late January or even early February. You have what, February, March, April? Yeah. How many of those players that are draftees are going to say, hey, I'm going to play a full 10-game set right before the draft and risk myself getting hurt for that draft?
I think the answer is why not? Like, why would it change just because it's happening closer to the draft date than now? If they play for 3 months, you know, if they go November, December, January, or whatever it is, like, I don't see any.
I guess you're right.
Difference between the end.
And the injury risk is the same in the fall as it is in the spring. So
yeah, the NFL can always just push the draft date again too. Like, good
point.
I mean, we're assuming the NFL is going to stay on a schedule this year, which is a big if. So I don't know. I think the expectations at the end of the day are just incredibly tough. And a quick shout out from Pat, one of our patrons, and in Twitch chat. Thanks, Pat. Saying that colleges aren't going to be able to quarantine their athletes. They're going to want to go out and have fun, which spreads COVID. And then you got classes if these kids are going to classes.
Well, they aren't at North Carolina. We know that.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's a great comment too, because they've said in the last couple of days, the highest growing group for people with COVID is people late teens, early 20s,
18 to 29.
Yeah. So like, we're definitely where our generation and those younger than us are the problem right now, because they don't care about it. They're not treating it as seriously as they should be. And I think the fact that universities and schools aren't backing, you know, spacing, masks, all the best requirements you can do to protect the other students, the professors, the TAs, everyone involved, like, you're just not helping yourselves. And because these are student athletes, he's right. I'm like, do you trust an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old to make the best decisions? No, you don't. They're not going to be responsible. Yeah, they're barely adults.
Like, I would say there are some players, like a small
There's always exceptions.
I would say, okay, you could trust them.
Who are 50 years old by the time they're 20. I get that.
Like, for example, if I'm looking from this past draft class, like a Tua Tagovailoa, we wouldn't have to worry about.
Yeah.
But like, there's players out there which you do. And the conference we talked about, the Big 12, most of those colleges are in red states and it's most of the red states. I don't want this to get political, but the whole mask thing that you bring up, that if your state isn't mandating the mask, that's a higher risk of getting a transmission, and it's not safe. That's why I say just move it to the spring. Yeah. Move it to the spring, wait for all this shit to just blow over, and hopefully it does blow over.
Sure, it'll be 2 weeks. Everybody will stop. We'll all be better after that. I think I heard that in March.
I have a feeling like it makes me laugh how with all the memes of like, can 2020 just end? Like, magically it's going to be January 1st, 2021, and all this bad shit's just going to go away. It's just going to magically go away because it's a new year.
It's going to be wild. And that's the thing that I don't expect things to go well, and I think that's my final thought on there. It's just I don't expect kids in college, because football teams are like, in college, aren't there like 80, 90 kids like on the team and supporting the team?
Close,
so it's like you have larger groups,
because then you have graduate assistants, you have the student, like the non-athlete students that work with the team that are like getting their like sports management or like sports medicine degrees. So I mean, it's not just football players that can be affected. But let's move away from COVID yet again, and let's talk about our first UFC news for MVP Sports Live. And this is kind of a double dose of news. The big one is Conor McGregor, because his name is Conor McGregor. But also Dana White talked also about Jon Jones. So the two comments both came from which podcast was it? My Mom's Basement. And I want to say it's Barstool Sports.
Barstool. It is.
The Conor McGregor comment is this. Dana White said, this year he is retired. He doesn't have a fight this year, and he won't have a fight this year. Conor McGregor will not fight in 2020. I guarantee he will not fight in 2020. This is all because Conor McGregor earlier said, I'm retired. Then he tweeted out, I think it was a couple weeks ago, a tweet that just said, I accept. So it set everyone a roar, like, oh my God, is Conor McGregor back? However, also Dana White made comments about Jon Jones. And these comments to Barstool Sports again, he said, you know as much as I know. The last time he said, I'm not fighting, he's not fighting. So we're feeling this thing out. When it's time for him to fight, we'll see. And this is all going into, he wanted to fight Francis Ngannou. And Dana White said, no, not going to happen. So Jon Jones said, fuck it, I'm done. I'm not going to fight. And then now everyone's like, well, do you strip the title off of Jon Jones? But the question I want to ask you, Dave, is are we going to see Conor McGregor or Jon Jones fight again I'll say in 2021, not 2020, 2021. Will we see either of these two fighting again?
Yeah, I mean, this is all just contract arguments right now. Like, Conor McGregor wants to fight again. It's one of those situations where he's set up his plan to have his super fight rematch with Khabib. And I think that that's still his plan. It just, everything got delayed because of COVID. So he's just looking out for himself, and he's at a liberty where he doesn't have to take any fights he doesn't want to. His name recognition, he can go for a title shot whenever he wants to. So obviously, with everything going on at the top of the bracket for that weight class, like Khabib's going against Justin Gaethje, and then the winner of that fight, we assume, Khabib's already assuming it's himself. He's already tossed out I think his comment was like in February or something. He wanted another fight with, and I've already forgotten his name, Canadian fighter George St. Pierre. GSP. So he's already called out his next shot with one of the all-time greats in GSP. We don't know if that's going to happen. Obviously, he has to beat Gaethje first, but I would assume somewhere post that maybe, or in relation to that, is where Conor gets back in the conversation, because Conor's just the biggest draw. Like, that's what it is. Although I do have to give them credit. Fight Island shit was insane. There were so many fights all hours of the day. There's a kid over there who fought 2 times in 7 days, both knockouts, like insane shit. So credit to that. Jon Jones is his own worst enemy. He commits the most dumb public things to record.
Mishaps. Public mishaps. Choices.
Makes it sound like it's not his fault.
Public choices?
Yeah, he doesn't look out for himself. But I think that him trying to call his own shot because he is, one of the greatest pound for pound fighters ever to have existed. Great try, but you don't have that pull because of your history, your checkered past as far as drug, I want to say drug abuse, steroids. Let's just go to steroids.
Yeah.
Because he has been suspended multiple times, because of all of that, and he's not a guaranteed fight, he has to test clean. So I think both of these are just come down to contracts. It's like, hey, what's the payday? What's the line? Who do I get to fight? Because if I'm not happy with any of those, I'm walking from that fight.
Mm-hmm.
So 2020, I could see them both not fighting in 2020, but by 2021, they will have fights lined up. Absolutely.
And I mean, just looking back at the last fights between these, for John Jones, the last two was the one that me and you almost went to. And then I remember after the results came through in our hotel room, you saying, I'm glad we didn't go to that fight. That one had that ridiculous... Oh, who was it? The ridiculous, like, fucking...
We literally... I'm wearing the t-shirt for Summer League. It was when we were there for Summer League. But who
was the fighter that had that, like, knee to the head, and it was just instant knockout?
Oh, that was...
Because that was that card that he just... the knee met the head.
Got the knee to the head.
Yes.
It might have been Masvidal.
Okay. And I remember you saying, you're like, man, I'm glad we didn't pay to go to that fight.
Yeah, that was bad news for him.
And then in February, the Jones-Reyes fight, which he won, where Conor McGregor lost to Khabib in October of 2018. Then 2 years later, right before COVID, hey, Donald Corleone, boom,
Cowboy.
Knockout, like first round, boom. KO.
No, it was a shoulder. It was a shoulder.
I'm doing a punch because it's USC.
He didn't.
UFC,
Dave.
Yeah.
No. Conor McGregor won the fight via shoulder blows.
Mm-hmm.
He hit him in the fucking orbital with his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It was the weirdest shit.
Yeah. So, I mean...
that's a whole different story because Cowboy was coming in, being rocked in like 3 of his last 4 fights, one or the other. And it was just concussion. Like, he was not all there by that point. He had glass chin.
The only part of me, because I feel like I'm one of the only Conor McGregor fans left in the world.
I doubt that. But okay.
Because I say that sarcastically, just because like Conor I felt was like the biggest thing. Then the Floyd fight happened and there were more haters. Then the Khabib stuff happened and there were more haters. That usually happens. But the only thing...
Suddenly you're not the...
Yeah, you're not the idol that everyone wants to put you as. The only thing I fear with a McGregor Khabib 2, which I would love to see, but I don't think Conor will win that match. That's what I'm fear. That's what I fear. Yeah, that's what I fear. Like I want to see knockout Conor, not Conor get his fucking ass kicked. Right. So that's the only fear I have with a Khabib Conor round 2 kind of a situation.
No, what I can see happening is like if Khabib wins his next 2 fights, he just retires, and then Conor will call him out because it'll be safe for him to talk shit because Khabib, when he says he's done, he'll probably be done. Like that's
God. What if Khabib then said, "Fuck it, one more"?
Then Conor's running.
Conor would be like, I retire. I'm not fighting.
It's one of those situations where he's just looking for his chance to talk shit and look tough again.
Mm-hmm. But Dave, it's time to segue into a daily segment here on MVP. This is where I got to come up with a new saying for this because it's not just NBA players, but how Sean would usually do it. The dampest of dudes, the soggiest of shooters, the moistest of men. These are wet boys. I feel like I was in my car today. I'm like the soggiest, soggiest of shooters is the NBA reference. I want to get a baseball. Like I was trying to think like, is there a synonym for wet that starts with an H? And I was like the wettest of hitters, where like you put that like you kind of emphasize that H sound like cool whip in there.
You might kind of work on that. We'll take comment suggestions.
I'm shopping it. I'm workshopping it right now. But this is wet boys. This is kind of like our guys who they popped off the day before. So these are all Monday performances, guys. We want to give a little tip of the hat to some weekly honor, daily honors, because now we're doing it daily. And we have a new addition that the patrons, patreon.com/Moswell podcast, Silver and Up, got to vote for the patron wet boy of the day. So we will have that as well. But Dave, I will let you take the floor first. Who's your wet boy from today or from yesterday?
From yesterday. My wet boy of yesterday is a shout out to Sean. Sean obviously rode this man draft stock straight to the moon. He was shooting him to the moon. It was one of those interesting drafts.
That's a nice callback too. I like that callback too.
Michael Porter Jr. going into that draft class obviously was one of the top prospects. Obviously, the back injuries, the family history of ACLs, MCLs, and everything possibly that could go wrong with your knees went wrong with their knees. But it doesn't matter because, he took a year, he built himself back up, and then he goes out there and kills it. He has a career best performance to date, 37 points, 12 boards and a block, just shooting fire. I mean, shooting absolutely fire. And you just got to look at those teams and go, all right, now why did these teams all pass on him? And we knew the medicals were bad, but like he's still much better than all of those players.
It's just the fucking Nugget way, man. Michael Porter Jr., ball, like
the rich get richer, man.
Like they know the talent that's there. The talent we knew was there.
Look at that Jerome Robinson pick, looking great right now for the Clippers. A lot of teams who should not have passed on him, including the Bulls. Wendell Carter Jr. or MPJ. Yeah, I understand. And again, this is, hindsight 2020. And again, we don't know foresight. We could watch him go down with a back injury tomorrow. Please don't. Knock on wood.
It's like I'm knocking right away, baby.
Please don't. But like he just looks so smooth out there, and it's really good to see him back in a groove again. Offensively, he is sky's the limit for this kid.
So the bet, I got to give a tip of the head. Also, this is from a couple days from the weekend, but I still got to give a tip of the hat to the Nuggets Twitter squad. And the reason why I say that is the Nuggets Twitter account when they played the Heat, they lost the game against the Heat. Yeah. But there was a tweet from them that basically like went down the entire draft from last year and like had clips behind it. And then they got to ball and it just zoomed in on the Miami Heat. Yep. And it was like just tip of the hat. It was beautiful. You lost the game, but you kind of threw out the ball love, which I love to see. I find it funny. You say you're giving some Sean love. If Sean watching the show right now, he'd be happy with my wet boy too, because it's another guy. It's another guy that Sean's talked up. When he had 54 points the other day, you said, "Oh my God, we got to at Sean." Soapy's gonna love it too. T.J. Warren, Soapy himself was also like, he's like, you gotta get. This was after the game show. He goes, you got to give TJ Warren a wet boy. And I'm like, I don't know if Dave does. He goes, Dave's not going to give it to TJ Warren. I won't. You got to give it to TJ Warren. Soapy was calling for it. I am a man of the people. So I went ahead, gave my wet boy to TJ, where he had 54 points the day before, 34 points yesterday, 11 rebounds, 7 turnovers forced. He blocked 4 shots and 3 steals. Holy shit. Is that something like that's something I don't think we put on a wet boy counter yet.
Maybe he's defensive for a couple of guys, but it's pretty impressive.
That is like, I didn't expect that from TJ Warren to have 3 steals and 4 blocks. So Pacers playing really well. They could be one that could be a scary one in the East.
And they're surprising because I assumed without Sabonis, they would be struggling. Instead, they got the bucket getter and TJ Warren, the black hole of offense, just going off.
I mean, I would throw a joke at the Suns, but the Suns are also playing well right now.
No.
Like for letting TJ go, but like
giving up TJ Warren and a second-round pick for cash considerations worked out.
Well, cash considerations is the MVP, man. He's the best player out there.
Absolutely.
Cash considerations.
Remember when Jordan Bell got traded for cash considerations? Where's Jordan Bell now?
Is he still with Golden State?
No. He went from Golden State to the Timberwolves to the Rockets.
Let me see.
And I think he got G League or Grizzly, maybe.
According to Wikipedia, he is on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Jesus.
So he went from Golden State, played from 2017 to 2019. In 2018, he was a Santa Cruz Warrior, got traded to the T-Wolves, and this year alone, 2020, he's been a T-Wolf, he's been a Grizzly, and now he's a Cleveland Cavalier.
For some reason, I thought he got put on the Rockets, but I think I got that tail end mixed up with him and Bruno.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Bruno is on the Rockets because you corrected me on that one.
Either way, not too disappointed with that now, are we?
No. And then the first ever Wet Boy for our patrons. This was voted on patreon.com/MVP vids. Our silver and up members are given the Wet Boy honors for today to Rockford native Fred Van Vliet. This is a guy that I'm happy got the Wet Boy, Dave, because this is the guy I would have given the Wet Boy to. There were two guys that I was thinking of. I was like Fred Van Vliet or Jacob deGrom if I wanted to be different and go away from basketball, because deGrom struck out like 9 yesterday in 6 innings. But no, Fred Van Vliet playing really just out of his mind basketball, like 58% from 3, like 50% from the field, 58 from 3, and just the Raptors as a whole. And that's going to segue, this is going to be a perfect segue into our NBA talk, because one of the teams I wanted to talk about are the Toronto Raptors. And they are, since the restart, they have played 2 games. They have beaten the Los Angeles Lakers, who are right now top seed in the Western Conference. And then they locked in the number 1 seed. And then they also beat Miami in a thriller of a game yesterday. The thing I want to ask you, and this is because of stuff we've already seen, the Bucks have lost 2 straight. The Sixers are 1-1, but they didn't even look that good against the Spurs and probably should have lost that Spurs game that they won. I think that one was yesterday too. The thing I want to ask you, Dave, is should the Raptors, although they'll probably be the 2 seed, should they be the team to fear in the East? Should they be the favorite when we look at the Eastern Conference?
They're the team I'm most afraid of in the East. I think Giannis on his own is terrifying, but after watching the Bucks flounder against the G League Nets today and lose to them, and I understand Giannis only played for a quarter. Like they decided that for whatever reason they were just basically not going to run out their team, even though you'd like to make sure they're all playing well. Wins and losses still count. It's not over. By the way, the Clippers just lost to the Suns.
Okay. Damn.
That's
another top seed that went down.
Just went final. On a buzzer beater win. But no, it's incredibly disappointing to watch, the Bucks that. But like when I look at what the team has, I'm just impressed by the nightmare matchups that the Raptors can make for people. Like they have Kyle Lowry, who's able to guard everybody. He's short, but he's strong as a point guard. Great shooter outside, extremely confident, incredible ball movement on that team. He knows how to get guys open. Van Vliet can just light it up, go full dad mode, and just knock down shots from the outside. Reenacting history there when last year's playoffs, obviously. Siakam and OG. I mean, what a fucking tandem. I love OG Anunoby. Like I
don't know who this Siakam is, but I know who C-Scam is.
C-Scam.
Pascal C-Scam.
I think that they just have great wing depth. They have 2 bigs in Ibaka and Gasol, who are just professional defenders.
Yeah.
Like they have utility everywhere, but I think it's just they are the ideal team built out for the modern NBA right now. They're hitting open shots from 3. They've got guys going to the lane. They can work the mid-range. They've got a little bit of everything, but they've got incredible defense. And I think that's what sets them apart. Like they are by far the scariest defensive team in the NBA. And just after watching that Lakers game, it was just kind of reassuring. Like, they're legit.
Well, the thing that I only know this because I researched it because the Wet Boy was Fred Van Vliet, but they're a team. So I watched Colin Cowherd earlier today. He did a segment on yesterday's show about the Rockets.
Yeah.
And how he said that the Rockets might be one of the teams in the West that's benefited most from the COVID break that we had. And his reasoning there really short is that Harden's usually gassed by the end of the year. And he basically had a couple months to basically rest, so he looks more rested, and that Brody's great.
He just shot absolutely awful
Yeah,
last night.
but at least we know that he just shot terribly, and it's not because his legs are shot.
Right, I understand where he's coming from in that.
But like the Raptors too, I think are in that situation because when I was looking at Fred VanVleet's last games, there were a couple before the halt of the season where Fred VanVleet did not play, and he wasn't playing. He was inactive for games, and having the months off that we did allowed Fred VanVleet to get healthy to where now we're kind of seeing this reloaded Raptors team of like, this is what we are when we're healthy. And I'm looking at their schedule. So they've already beat the Lakers and Heat, which are two teams that are no joke of an opponent.
The Heat game was intense, and that's our awful shooting on both sides. But I mean, that was a gritty, grinded out game. That was good basketball.
But I mean, coming up, besides what two of their last 6 are easy games, and I'm gonna put air quotes because it's basketball. Anyone can win. I think the Magic and the Grizzlies should be the 2 teams that don't give the Raptors too much trouble.
The Magic without Jonathan Isaac are a step back, but they were still a very good team.
The Grizzlies, with how poor they've played in their 3
last
games
night against the Pels.
Yeah, I was surprised Ja struggled.
I mean, Lonzo Ball and Drew Holiday defense, no joke.
That Soapy made the comment when I brought up how many points he had. He's like, "Oh man, Lonzo putting on the clamps. Lonzo's putting the clamps on him." But every other opponent, Boston should be a good one. Milwaukee, the 76ers, the Nuggets, even 3 of those 4 opponents are their Eastern Conference foes. Where to me, the one I'm looking at is the 2 I'm looking at, I should say. The Boston one for sure, and the Bucks one, because if the Raptors win those 2 games, the Raptors might be the team I pick to go out of the East because of how well they've looked. Because the Sixers to me, and we'll get into the Sixers in a little bit, they're done. They're done to me. They haven't looked like a good team. I think they're going to be a first round exit anyways. So I'm not high on them anyways.
Wow, Jake, where you at?
But we will get into the Sixers next. But yeah, if they win those 2 games, Bucks and Celtics, I think there's no doubt that the Raptors should be the favorite in the East.
It's hard to say there's no doubt when Giannis is still a thing. You have one of the best players in the NBA, the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year this year, likely. And they have one of the best shooting squads from the outside because of the system that Bud has in place, because of the mismatches that Giannis driving into the paint creates for other players. It is hard for me to put somebody else over them in a series, but at the same time, Giannis hasn't won the big one yet. It's one of those things where I look at the Raptors and I go, I understand Kawhi was on this team last year, and he was one of the reason you guys won out in the East and made it to the championship and won it, but everybody got that experience. And I think that getting there and accomplishing that means a lot to this team towards this year's playoffs, because it's another year of playoff performances. And I think one of the big things is OG was out last year medically, but not with an injury or anything. It's he's now got a chance to prove himself in big time hits. And we saw what he did last night and in their first game. He is a monster. He just, I almost used some bad language there. He had a great matchup on LeBron, and that was phenomenal defense from him, and then he was able to go over and slam it down too. He's one of those players who has stepped up huge. I think that Siakam, as much credit as I'm giving everyone else on the team, it's he almost goes underrated now. And the guy putting up 20 points a game, and he's able to get his buckets. He's able to slash. He's got the pull-up shot now a little bit. It's just they have such good diversity. And then if Norman Powell gets hot again, you've got another wing out there who can shoot from the outside. It just, they have all the weapons. They have a great head coach. They were just there last year. I don't know. That the Celtics matchup's the interesting one with me, because what Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown did last night Yeah, last night when they each had like 30.
They're the Raptors' true threat.
They're the interesting
Celtics
one.
the Celtics are the ones to me that are the true threat, and the reason why I say that is Giannis is great. Giannis is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem I have with the Bucks right now is the supporting cast around Giannis. What am I going to see in a 7-game series against the Raptors? Am I going to see the team against the Rockets where you had Giannis and 2 other people with 20-plus points, and the only reason they got beat was because James Harden and Brody went off in that game with some help from their supporting cast as well?
Yep.
Or am I going to see the Bucks that I saw against the Nets today where Giannis had 16?
You're not going to see 12 minutes of Giannis.
Yeah, and I mean, Giannis finished with 16, but like the rest of the team didn't. Like, that's the problem to me. The rest of the team around Giannis needs to perform up to where Giannis is. And I'm not saying they have to be superstars, but they have to help him out if the Raptors are going to be successful, or if the Bucks are going to be successful.
The dude went 7 of 8 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3. Like, he can get his whenever he wants.
He's not the problem.
He only played 16 minutes to take it back.
He's not the problem. The rest of the team is. The rest of the team.
If they wanted to win that game, they
support
could
him.
have, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
They could have put the starters out there in the second half of the game, or in the fourth quarter, and won the game. They made a decision to roll it out with the second and third units out there. That was on them. I don't understand that logic.
And honestly, too, the Raptors are a different team. They're a tougher team than the Nets are, and obviously a 7-game series is even a different animal as well. I wonder how that breaks down with this team. But I do want to pivot into, I'm going to say our last thing for today, because we're getting kind of crunchy with time. I'll say this. We were going to end the show with Aaron Rodgers. We're going to push that to tomorrow because that's a flexible topic. It's not a time-sensitive one. So we'll talk Aaron tomorrow. Thing we will end the show with, though, is the 76ers. I kind of bashed them, and the question that we are asking here is, how worried should Sixer fans be about the 76ers? Because I'm just watching them and I'm worried, because the first game that they played, they go ahead and lose that game. I'm trying to think of the opponent off the top of my head, and I'm pulling up the box score. The Pacers. They lose that game. Pacers were red hot. TJ Warren had 54 points. You could just say, oh, TJ Warren beat the 76ers. But even the game last night, go ahead.
TJ Warren live update. 11 minutes, 17 points, 6 of 6 from the field, 3 of 3 from 3, 2 of 2 from the line. He's at plus 22.
Back-to-back wet boy? Is that what I'm
just doing TJ Warren things.
So
hashtag just TJ Warren things.
The game last night, though, you have the Spurs and the 76ers. Ben looked god-awful in that game for most of it. The Spurs should have won that game. I was surprised they didn't. The 76ers were trying to give the Spurs the game. They were trying to give them the game, and the Spurs went, nope, we just can't capitalize. So, to me, after 2 games, I know they're 1-1, but they've got Washington. This is the 76ers. They've got Washington coming up. Should be winnable. The Magic should be winnable. It is the easiest. The next 2 are their easiest.
Yeah.
But their last 4, Portland, who's chasing a playoff spot.
Yep, very tough.
The Suns, who look red hot right now, pun intended. Yep. The Raptors, who I just said should be the favorites in the East. Yep. And then the Rockets, who are on a tear right now.
Those are all no jokes.
If I'm the Sixers fans, I'm worried because that stretch of 4 could be 4 straight losses. And then although that won't hurt your seeding because you'll still be 6th, then you got to play the Boston Celtics in the first round. That's why I think they get bounced after round 1.
But you know what? That first round matchup, Al Horford will be wearing a Sixers jersey this time, baby. You showed them right, didn't you? With all that money in the contract,
he'll be turning the ball over because they'll be like, "Old teammate."
Brand. Way to make that decision, Elton Brand. You're helping the team. That is honestly one of the most interesting things you said. Is they could roll out 04, well, technically 05 to finish out their season.
If they lose to the Magic, yeah.
If they lose to everybody coming up, I mean, that would be insane. Yeah, I don't know. That's tough. Look, the 76ers are equipped enough to compete with anybody in the playoffs. I mean, obviously the Joel Embiid, Shake, Milton 1-5 combo playing the pick and roll at the top can work. The Ben Simmons shift to power forward's been shrug. That's the one thing I'd love to hit up our boy Jake and get his take on that. Like, how does he feel about it so far? I think that Shake had a horrible game, then he had a comeback game. It just comes down to like, do we feel like this is working long term? Do we not? I mean, in this season, I don't know. The Sixers team does not look like they're going to have it. I agree with you in the fact that they're likely going to have a disappointing finish to the season. And in the first round, I don't know if they do get matched up, if it is locked in as Celtics Sixers, I would be a little hard pressed to say the Celtics wouldn't win that one pretty easily, but at the same time, like, they got no bigs, and that's been the story. It's the Al Horford-less Celtics versus the Sixers. Can they make it count where it works? And I don't know. That's the big question. It's not impossible for the 76ers to win a series because they have all the pieces they need to. It's just they don't fit together. The puzzle pieces don't fit.
And there's a part of me that draws to, and it wouldn't be a Sixer topic on MVP unless Ricky brought this up, but
yeah, go for
there's also a Brett Brown problem here because I feel like now with the restart, there's more of an emphasis on coaching than there ever has been. And the reason why I say that is like teams like the Lakers, Vogel doesn't have to do as much because he's got LeBron and AD out there. But the Sixers are not the Lakers. The Sixers are not the Clippers. They don't have the veterans that those two teams have. They have arguably the two of their two stars, Joel and Ben Simmons, are arguably the most controversial pairing, I'll say. And I don't mean controversial as like off the court. I just mean like we talk about, do you have to trade one? Is one not like good enough for his position, playing the four? Does Ben need the ball more? So many questions to where I feel like there should be pressure on Brett Brown because they're not winning. And he's the one to make sure that the pieces that you have to kind of fit together.
Yeah, that's his job is to make them fit.
And that's, like you said, his job. I just feel like with the 76ers, though, there's also a question that I have of, during the break, what was this team doing? Where I have the question of mainly Joe and Ben, mainly Ben, because Ben had a pretty good game against the Pacers.
Ben was out there shooting threes, man.
A terrible game, though, against the Spurs. And I wonder if all these other teams, A, worked harder during the time off than the 76ers, and then B, on top of it, and the Spurs showed this, the Spurs are fighting for something. The Sixers after a loss to the Pacers, they've already got the 6th seed locked up. If they don't get the 5th seed, okay, where it's like the rest of these teams that they're playing are all, except for like Washington and maybe Orlando, the rest of these teams are fighting for something. They have more of a drive than the Sixers. So it's like, if you're a Sixer player, what do you have to do to get up for the game, to get yourself up and amped for the basketball game?
Yet again, that falls on Brett Brown. If your players can't motivate themselves, your job as a coach is to motivate them.
There's a little bit of player there, because and I'm going to bring in the GOAT here, so don't chastise me.
As a player, if you can't motivate yourself,
the
then
coach
falls
has
on the
to.
coach.
Yeah.
The number one responsibility is on the player to be motivated for themselves. But yeah. But I don't know, I look at this team and I can't say you're wrong, but they've got pieces. You know, Toby is a above average wing. He is good. He can score. He can defend. You know, they Al Horford off the bench seems to be working, I think. You know, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the best. Their rotations are still shit. But, like, I at least have to commend them for making the move to put Shake in the starting lineup, try to make a splash. Honestly, the biggest thing is just, like, they need some players to break out, and I think that's what hasn't happened. It's just every game you're kind of relying on the same thing to happen, and you need Embiid to just cause havoc in the low post. And if he's not, then he's not effective. He's not playing winning basketball, let's put it that way.
And like right now, as we're recording, 8:12 to go in the second, Pacers lead the Magic 53-29.
Yeah, the Magic have been demoralized after losing Jonathan Isaac.
But I'm not even like saying that fact of like if the Pacers win today, that means that they go to so they're going to go to 12.5 back, and that's now a game and a half above the 76ers, and even the Pacers next one. Okay, the Suns could be tough, the Lakers will be tough, the Heat twice, and the Rockets once. So like
that's also
the Pacers also have a tough schedule. It's just the fact of
everybody's facing playoff teams.
It's just the fact of I have more confidence in the Pacers than I do the 76ers. But Sixer fans,
I mean, if you can continue riding a red hot TJ Warren, then yeah. I mean, if his shooting steps off though,
yeah, he's got 17 right now, and I mean, shooters can go cold.
Yeah,
they can.
That's my fear. Again, they said this is going to be the best shooting splits we've ever seen because of the size of the gym, the backboard setup with the lack of depth there. So I think that, more than likely people are going to shoot incredibly well from the bubble, but it'll be interesting to see.
And to end the show because this is basically it, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you, Dave, but I think you'll be able to hit this curveball. One thing I want to do, just because usually with the NBA, we've been doing like kind of two topics from the games that happened the day before, because you are the big basketball aficionado.
Yeah, I'm watching the game right now. I'm watching several games right now.
I want to ask you to end the show.
Yeah.
Dave's Corner. Is there anything from basketball that happened yesterday? Dave's Corner. Anything that happened yesterday in a game we didn't mention? Like is there something that you're like, ooh, I wanted to mention that from yesterday's games, but we didn't talk about it as a topic?
Let's see. We hit Fred VanVleet in the Raptors Heat game. Like I said, great contest there. Michael Porter Jr. with the standout performance in the Nuggets Thunder. TJ Warren in the Pacers Wizards game looked great. The only game we really didn't touch on was the Grizzlies Pelicans, which would be an interesting one. You mentioned Josh struggling offensively. I think the Pelicans did a great job locking them down defensively. And this is the first time we saw Zion play extended minutes. He did shoot poorly to start the game. He did finish 9 of 21, which is still not great. 5 of 10 from the line, 23 points total. But honestly, it's one of those situations where after the first two games, a lot of people were talking a lot of shit about him, not being in shape when he came back to the bubble, just looking gassed defensively, out of place, can't really contribute to the game. So it's trending in the right direction, at least for these Pelicans. I still don't think they're going to be the playoff team to break in, but it does, look a little sad for the Grizzlies. But hey, Grayson Allen out there dropping dimes from the outside, dropping threes from everywhere. And Jaren Jackson Jr., the day before it hit some incredible shots. But yeah, I think that's my storyline as far as I can go.
I think that's something I'm going to start doing is right after the basketball. Hey, Dave, something we didn't talk about yesterday. Just a little snippet so that we can get kind of some love for most of the games, because
the Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker shit is never going to end. As we saw yesterday was Donovan Mitchell popping off.
The fucking fact that the Lakers fed AD and were like LeBron just was like, I'm going to feed the beast, and that's how we're going to win. Against Rudy Gobert.
Yep. But yeah, Donovan Mitchell, great performance in a losing effort. Today, Devin Booker hits a step-up winner, so that's what you get.
But that's going to do it for MVP Sports Live. If you're watching live on Twitch, which if you're on YouTube, you can get this live on Twitch. Right now, we're recording 4:30 Central each and every Monday through Friday. So you can watch us live, twitch.tv/MVP vids. If you're on Twitch right now and you miss it, you can always catch it on YouTube. One thing I didn't say during the housekeeping that I'm going to start to for the next couple of shows at the beginning of the show is eventually these will be on podcast services too. So if you're not a YouTube person and you're Spotify, iTunes, we will eventually be having these in podcast format. If you rather listen to it than watch it on YouTube. So that is coming shortly but surely. But yeah, I want to thank you guys, however you're digesting YouTube, Twitch. Thank you guys for watching. Games Live will be, it's one of those things where I originally wanted to call them Games Day, like Sports Daily and Games Daily, but there's already a Games Daily, so I couldn't do that. So MVP Games Live. Go ahead,
Jaren
Dave.
Jackson is out for the season.
Tomorrow's show, we'll talk about it for sure. More in depth.
Suffered a meniscus tear.
Oh, no.
Left knee.
No.
Ouch.
So that's just a shot.
That was 14 minutes ago. Woj just dropped that.
That's just a shot in the foot to the Grizzlies for sure, right?
Yeah, we'll talk tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow. But thank you guys on Twitch. Games Live is coming up next. We're going to take a little break so that Soapy and I can get everything ready. But as always, have a good day, everybody.